Welcome, everyone, and happy Thursday. It is noon Eastern time here in the booming metropolis just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, known as Ambler, PA. We finally started to dig ourselves out of some of the snow that continues to happen here, and just in time for our weekly look at all things HR, all things AI, all things talent management, all things talent acquisition, and everything in between. And of course, I am talking about the show that happens every single Thursday at noon in Ambler. It is Talent Experience Live. Uh, Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose is to help 1 billion find the right work. Of course, we joke that's not a typo. A billion is a lot of people. But that is why we host this podcast every single Thursday, why we have another fantastic podcast with Cliff Yurkowitz called Unusual Attitudes, which comes out monthly on the first Monday of the month, typically. It's also why we have a plethora of fantastic webinars and why we are at every single HR tech event under the sun, including our flagship event coming up March 10th through the 12th in Philadelphia. Of course, I'm talking about I Am Phenom. So if you haven't registered, please do. I know we have some promotions going on right now. You can always use the promo code TRAIN if you are a local in the Philadelphia area, and get yourself a couple comp tickets for you and your team to see a keynote speaker, Simon Sinek, to learn about our product and so much more. Now, I Am Phenom is fantastic, as are our webinars and our podcasts. But the real way that we help a billion find the right work is through our Applied Intelligence Talent Experience platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, recruiters achieve next level productivity and efficiency, and managers get to build better teams through data automation and analytics. If any of this interests you at all, of course, you can register for I Am Phenom, or you can head on over to phenom.com to learn more. I'm sure we'll have slide-in banners and cover pages and everything promoting I Am Phenom, but you can always learn a little bit more about the product there if you so choose. And tell them Devin sent you. Not that I get paid on that, but it would just be nice to know that he came from me. Anyway, that covers our bills. The bills are paid. It is time to jump into today's episode. I know last week we took a brief break from our AI and automation levels series. We talked, of course, with a few CVM managers, Hannah Madden and Maddie Hendricks, about how to really prepare yourself for I Am Phenom. But we are getting right back into the AI and automation levels conversation. Today, we are talking about level 3. And this is where things really start to feel different, where automation really handles most of the work within your ecosystem. Of course, it's defined by boundaries, but the intelligence begins to adapt based on context, and humans continue to be in the loop a little bit more, but they get to finally hand some of their primary duties off to AI and intelligence. And to cover level 3, I have a fantastic guest joining me today. I am joined by Branka, and I apologize. I did not ask how to pronounce her last name, and I'm not going to butcher it. So without any further hesitation, let's bring Branka on so we can learn how to say her last name all together, and we can hear a little bit about her as well as level 3. Welcome to the program, Branka. I'm sorry. I'm so unprofessional, but I've butchered enough names to know not to do it again. How do we say your last name?
It's actually Branka Nikolic. Can you do that?
Branka Nikolic. How good?
Amazing.
All right. Perfect.
I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, tell us a little bit about what you do here at Phenom, and let's set the stage for level 3 and how you became an expert, in AI and automation.
Yeah. First, I have to say I'm very excited to be on TXL. It's my first time. I'm nervous, but I'm really excited about being here. So thank you for having me. Second, I've been with Phenom for 5 years. My journey was or has been an interesting one. Started as a CVM, then moved to product, and then from product knowledge, I moved to product marketing. So if you hear me start rambling about product a little, in more detail, that's the reason why. I'm really excited about, everything our product team does. But yeah, my job is really helping HR practitioners understand how applied AI can optimize their candidate experience and supercharge their hiring end to end. So So, yeah, and today we're here to talk about AI maturity scale and level three.
Absolutely. I love a good, history here at Phenom. Obviously, I started as an SDR, did a little bit of product management or products, not product management, excuse me, product marketing. Then took a brief sabbatical, as many folks know, and now I'm back, kind of, hosting the podcast again and working on the social side here at Phenom. But I think it speaks volume as to how well versed the employees here are at Phenom, getting a good baseline for skills. I mean, you're, going from dealing with customers on a day-to-day basis to hearing their challenges, then applying that on the product side, and now putting it into layman's terms for folks so that they can understand it and make it applicable into the future. So super exciting to hear your journey. Plus 5 years is a huge achievement. Pat yourself on the back. That's
I
awesome.
will. I actually will. I
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously, a lot of organizations will say that their system runs on its own unless something unusual happens. And you and I both know everything unusual always happens. So, what does this actually mean in practice, right? Is it where someone is messing with the system, the parameters, it breaks? Is it the system flagging something and saying, hey, maybe you want to take a look at this? You want to hop in, take a peek at this candidate? What does it mean for the system to actually run on its own unless something unusual happens?
Yeah, so it means that the workflow has defined rules and guardrails, right? And the system executes within those boundaries without human initiating it or supervising each step, right? Um, if you want something that will resonate with everyone or with you, really, your credit card company, right? Processes millions of transactions every day, completely autonomously. It checks purchase amount, merchant category, your location, your context, your spending pattern, time of day. I'm sure that's different around Christmas and other holidays where people tend to spend more, right? And approve the transaction under 2 seconds. We don't even think about it, right?
Mhm.
And it all happens without a single human involved. That's the run on its own part. Now, think about your own experience when you buy something in a city you've never been to, right? Or you buy a $4,000 laptop at 2 a.m. It kind of sounds, it looks suspicious.
Mhm.
So the system will flag it, right? Depends on the company. They may freeze your card. You may get that little notification confirm this is you, right? There's some type of escalation. So that steps in, and that's the unless something unusual happens part.
That it makes complete sense. I mean, I have a funny story about one of that credit card example. I obviously travel all around the world with Phenom. We go, we were in Munich last year. We went to Las Vegas last year. I go back to my hometown, try and treat my family to a nice dinner. And it's nothing too expensive, nothing too extravagant, right? We're at like an Applebee's or something. And my credit card company's like, whoa, did you mean to spend $150 at Applebee's? This doesn't seem like you. Even though like everyone else, I'm guilty of having a few too many glasses of wine and doing some online shopping and things like that. So it's that's the perfect example for you to share where it tracks your habits and will notify you if something seems wrong, right? It won't continue that process if you're making a large television or laptop process or something like that. I want to ask you, how is a level 3 and what you just described of the system kind of running on its own fundamentally different from level 2? Because level 2, I talked with Spencer, it is beginning to put those automations in place where you can start to take those steps. We used a traffic light analogy where all the lights are green and you're just kind of going until you put up that red traffic light. What's the key difference between level 2 and level 3?
Wait, first I need to ask who ended up paying that bill?
Oh, it was me. It was I got the
Okay.
notification. I was like, "Whoa!" But I did make the funny joke. It's like I guess I don't see my family enough in
Right.
order to
Right.
do this. But yes,
Yeah,
I
it's out of
totally
your
get
usual context, right?
it.
No, I
Hmm.
get it. Back to your question. Yeah, so as Spencer explained last week or 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
At level 2, humans are still in the workflow loop regularly, right? So automation handles tasks, but humans confirm decisions. AI suggests, right? It doesn't really make any decisions. Humans do, okay? Humans act. Now, at level 3, this default flips And the system handles the majority of those tasks, of those cases end to end. And then humans are only inserted when the system can confidently proceed. So, and if you think about it, it's a structural shift in team design, right? Not just a tech upgrade. And we'll talk about that a little later, but that's very important to understand. So, at level two, AI handles complex tasks, but humans are needed to finalize decisions. And then at level three, AI can autonomously manage processes, but requires human intervention for exceptions. Um, and if you think about that flow, the word autonomously, is doing a lot of work, right? So, and that's important because if we talk about scale, it becomes achievable at level three, right?
So I think of this as an example of automating, the first steps of an application process. And obviously, a human will make the final decision. I want to stress that. I always stress that at the end of the day, there's no AI making the decisions. But if you have someone who applies to your career site, goes through, a voice agent or some sort of agentic process to make it to the next step, there may be a candidate who is flagged because they don't fit the ideal criteria, and they need human eyes to look at it, right? So I think of maybe more of an abstract candidate who didn't go to college per se, but has 7 years of experience in that particular field. That may be, somebody who would get an exception from that particular degree requirement for this position because of their extenuating circumstances. Does that sound accurate for what kind of we're talking about here? Where the 90% of the candidates are going through the system seamlessly, but for the select few that there should be an exception for, it's flagging that.
Yeah, you're pretty spot on. So in hiring terms, if we think about the experience, right, and the flow, a candidate applies, the system scores them using AI fit criteria, then automatically routes them to screening. If that goes well, it takes them to self scheduling, right?
Mhm.
All without a recruiter touching it, and
Okay.
then until something unusual happens, and that's the key clause here. The system has been designed to recognize when it's outside its confidence zone, right? And when we say that, we mean like a credential doesn't match any type of flag, or
Okay.
maybe the fit score criteria is kind of ambiguous, or their work experience. Maybe there's a gap in work experience, right? So that kind of stuff would trigger so that human kind of comes in and intervenes, right? So you're not really automating everything, you're automating the predictable and escalating the exceptional.
Okay. So would this essentially be conditional automation, right? If all boxes and all things are created equal, it will be automated. And then if something is not, that would potentially be conditional intelligence, where it would flag some of those things where there are discrepancies. Is that accurate? Or how would you describe those two terminologies kind of in layman's terms within the workflow?
Yeah, so the conditional automation means exactly what we just said.
Yeah.
The system runs unless or until it can't, right? And if we think about an example, I mean, maybe you have a Tesla. I have friends who have a Tesla, right? So I had the pleasure of that experience firsthand. There's this like self-driving capability, right? So we're just sitting there, there's a route it follows, and then we're just going right from point A to point B. And if you compare it with level two, it doesn't really stop at an intersection and say, okay, should I turn right? And then you say, yes, turn right. No, it doesn't happen, right? So it kind of handles, not kind of, it handles 95% of that journey, right? But let's say it detects construction ahead, or maybe it hits something, or someone cuts you off. It'll stop, and you'll get that message like, hands on the wheel, we need you, right? So I don't know. I guess that's a good example.
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful example. I actually, it reminds me of kind of a viral video that I saw on the internet. Obviously, we've gotten buried with snow over the past few weeks in the Northeast, which we're not used to here. We get some snow, but not nearly the amount that we have. And there was a video of a Tesla driving down the road with a generator on like kind of a trailer behind it plugged in so that they could keep driving. And it reminded me of bolt on technology and human resources, where it's like, oh, yeah, you have this fantastic piece of intelligence and automation that you can drive, but you need to bolt on your old ATS to the back in order to get it from A to B. Nothing to do with the topic that we're talking about today. So I apologize for
No,
bringing
no,
it
but
up.
it's a
But
good point. The
mhm,
condition here is the guardrail, and we'll talk
yeah,
more about that, right? So within the condition, it's autonomous.
yeah.
Outside it, it's human. I
Well,
mean,
let's jump right into it. What are the guardrails? How are they clearly defined for a system to operate autonomously?
yeah, so if we, draw or talk about the autonomous zones versus guardrails, let's start with the what can autonomously be done, right?
Mhm.
Within the guardrails. So the examples would be sourcing candidates continuously from multiple channels, screening and scoring candidates, right, against fit criteria, fast track scheduling, all that we have today, right? And it's part of our workflows. Also, sending automated campaigns like nurture campaigns to candidates, triggering onboarding tasks, post offer. Those are all that can be, handled autonomously. Now, if you go back to the human handoff points or the guardrails, like we said, it's edge cases, right? Where credentials can be verified or there's something ambiguous about the work experience or even skills. It could be even roles with unusual requirements, right? Like it depends. Those are they may be outside the configured parameters. When you think about a company's defining these guardrails, they will see a lot of gaps, right? Where there's a gap in the process. And why that happens is because if there was a gap, there was human coordination that was kind of, putting it together. And there's no records, good records and good data, right? To kind of bridge those. So that's an important point for everyone really to consider when they're thinking about starting this journey, right? Of agentic element in their hiring journey. And like I said, any situation where the system detects an anomaly in the workflow, um, the guardrail is the governance model, right? That's what we're
Yeah.
talking about here. And organizations that define those guardrails clearly are the ones who will actually make the level 3 work. But it's not easy. It is
Yeah.
not easy for sure. and
No,
and
I think
companies should not be, organizations should not be discouraged, right, when things get tough, because we see that a lot and all the time.
yeah. No, I mean, I think back to I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but do you remember when we used to drive to vacations and we'd print out MapQuest and it would, bring it in our car, right? You know how to get to the highway from your house. And then when you're driving from, let's say, New Jersey to Florida, that's I-95 most of the way, or whatever the highway is local to you. You don't really need those directions until you get towards your destination, when you're close, when you're off the highway. That's where it's make a left on this particular street, so and so.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets tricky, right? To your point, that's where you need those guardrails within the hiring process, where you start to notice those gaps. But don't be discouraged and turn back around and be like, that's it. We're not going on vacation. I missed a turn. I don't have it. Because I think what level 3 can truly be for organizations is a Waze like, feature, is a Google Maps like feature. It is, an Apple Maps like feature, where once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to get to your destination faster. And any of these anomalies that potentially happen, there's road work, a candidate doesn't fit the criteria, whatever it may be, you'll be able to get there a little bit more seamlessly than you would have previously with the map printouts. One of the things that you had mentioned there specifically was scheduling automated interviews, a bunch of things that I think are super applicable, particularly to the high volume hiring audience, right? For folks that need a constant flow of candidates, whether it be for seasonal, whether it be for high turnover rates, for whatever that case may be. What would a real world example of kind of cruising at a cruising altitude for level 3 within high volume hiring that would truly help folks with some of these processes that we're describing?
Yeah, that's a fair question. But first, I want us to
Yeah.
stop here for just a second and go back to what you started this question with, right? We
Yeah.
talked about what conditional automation is, but what you just described is conditional intelligence, right? So you don't really have to worry about all these different bumps on the road, construction or closed road or whatever, right? When you have Google Maps, because it recalculates your route, right? You don't really have to think about that. And that's exactly what conditional intelligence is. And that's the difference from the automation. It's not really working within a predefined um, flow of steps, but it's reading the room, right, and
Mhm.
adjusting what it does based on what it sees. And that's
Yeah.
very important for everyone's understanding. So, and that's, there's a nice example. So whenever we get a question, the difference between a career chatbot on the career site, I own candidate experience, so I have a bunch of those examples. But the main difference between a chatbot on the career site and an agent is exactly this: a chatbot, it does have some natural language capabilities and so on, but it still works within predefined workflows. It'll ask you a couple of questions about your skills, your location, work experience, years of experience, and then it'll give you job recommendations. But with an agent, right, that works a little differently, you can have a conversation, ask about this particular role, then, but what about this role at this location? It'll give you different job recommendations. Then it'll ask you to upload your resume. It looks at everything there is about you and then actually recommends something totally different you didn't even think you would be a good fit for. So that's what we're talking about here. This is the next level that we are seeing, but we're hoping to see more of in 2026, right?
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. And I think we both are huge proponents of that kind of experience. You come from a CVM background. I come from an SDR background. Now we're both on the marketing team, right? We're not the traditional candidates. If you were looking through a simple, old school ATS system where it's based on job title, we probably wouldn't be a fit. But if we're starting to leverage these agents in certain ways, it may give candidates the opportunity to really paint a picture of their whole selves, right? And what skills they have that don't show up on a resume, but are implied through work experience and years of experience as well. So it's exciting to hear. Now,
sorry,
in a
back to your
previous
question. What was the
yeah,
original
no, keep going, keep
high
going.
volume
You're
flow,
good.
high volume flow? No, it's just I was like, I thought you were going to ask me about that when you first started. So
Yeah,
I'm like, let's just go and clarify
yeah.
that. Like I said, I think it's very important for the overall
Mhm.
understanding, and what we can expect to see more of in 2026 for sure.
Okay.
And when it comes to, like you said, this high volume hiring at level 3, it's what we mentioned already, right? So there's very quick job discovery on a career site, right? We don't really look for jobs, we get matched with them.
Mhm.
Then the agent may look at, like I said, work experience, fit score, then tell us or give us signals if we are a good fit or if maybe there are better roles that we can be matched with. If you're interested, you start applying, you go straight to screening. It's in line, you're still in the same screen, you answer a couple of questions. If that goes well, you go straight to self scheduling, right? Or whatever that flow looks like. It could be like a one-way video interview, right?
Mhm.
Or something like that. Or you could get an option to get connected to a recruiter right away, right? So that's what this flow can look like. And after, yeah, and then we go from there. You get hired. A lot of other automations get triggered, but this is the future of hiring, really.
Yeah. Now, in a past life before my SDR days, I was a recruiter. So I have to ask, how do these workflows change what recruiter and talent acquisition teams will look like? Maybe not tomorrow, but when we talk about 5, 10 years down the line. I know we've seen all of the crazy, AI videos about how it's replacing jobs and things like that. I think we here at Phenom are in the camp of it's not replacing humans' jobs, right? It's just making them different. So when we talk about kind of exemption based oversight, when we talk about team roles and responsibilities when they're stepping in for use cases, specific use cases or edge cases like we described, how do both talent acquisition teams and recruiters, uh, quite frankly, roles change, and how do we see them being in the future?
Yeah. I mean, we see this everywhere, right? Like AI replacing humans. And this is one of the most important questions for practitioners. Um, when recruiters only step in for exceptions, right? Their cognitive load shifts from volume management, right, to
Mhm.
judgment calls. And, if we think about this, we stop for a second, if people were so good at calculating, all of us, right, or coordinating, then we wouldn't have calculators and we wouldn't have computers, right? So
Mhm.
there are other things that we can do much better than that. So in this case, in the hiring context, instead of reviewing 200 applications to find 5 good ones, right? Recruiters could, or the system could just surface these 5 good ones to recruit. So your role will imminently change, and that's a good thing. It's actually good news, right? It changes what a recruiting team looks like. You need fewer coordinators handling transactional work and more strategic talent advisors. I actually just saw this post early this morning where this guy on LinkedIn was saying how HR will see a big split, right, in
Mhm.
how their roles operate really, and there will be one side handling the human aspect, like relationships and this strategic talent advisor
Mhm.
type of role or function, and then there will be a team who will oversee the AI exceptions, right, what we talked about. So
Yeah.
and that's, I guess that's something I agree with, and that's something that we will see in the future.
Yeah.
So when we think about what happens to team roles, and if we look at the most common roles, right, with hiring, you have like coordinators, you have recruiters. So coordinator roles, like scheduling coordinators, status changers, updaters, pipeline managers, they will get absorbed by automation, right?
Yeah.
These roles will either disappear or transform into workflow configuration and exception managers, what we just talked about. And
Mhm.
then when it comes to recruiters, recruiter capacity will expand. The same headcount could be processing more applications, right? Um, we have an example of an airline saved 8 hours per recruiter per week.
Mhm.
We also have a supermarket chain they made 7,000 hires in 2 weeks with the same team, right? That's impressive.
Mhm.
And when we talk about new roles emerging, then someone has to own those guardrails we've been talking about for what, 37 minutes now,
Yeah.
right? Someone needs to audit those AI decisions, manage the exception queue, and so on, right? So these are higher scale, higher judgment roles um, than traditional coordination work. So,
Yeah.
so
I
and,
I
and sorry, just
yeah.
one final thought on this. It's a risk organizations don't talk about enough. If you don't redesign the team alongside the technology, right, you end up with a lot of confused, potentially underutilized people, right, and a
Mhm.
system nobody trusts.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and you mentioned the 8 hours. I have a suggestion. This probably, won't go through. Let's just give people another day off, 4-day work week. We're saving 8 hours. What can we do with that? Monday through Thursday. I'm
I
kidding. I'm
wish.
sure the
I
airline
wish.
company won't do
Not
that.
on
It
this
would be nice though.
continent.
No,
Not on this continent.
no, not anytime soon. But it can't hurt to ask, right? That's what I. Anywho, one thing that mentioned, kind of the changing of roles, how things are different. It reminds me, and I've used this example before on the show, of ATM machines, right? People, it stands for automated teller machine. When they came out, people thought that bank tellers were no longer going to be a job. That's absolutely incorrect. The role has changed. You're not going to put, $10,000 that you won in the casino into an ATM. likely you're going to bring that to a teller so they can manually count it and do those sort of things. That's a far more intimate role, I guess I would say, versus your kind of daily transactions of like, hey, I need $20, to go to my gas station that only accepts cash, whatever that instance may be. So the roles changed from a bank teller, and I think the same thing will happen, from a recruiter's side. Now, you had one keyword, and I want to hone in on it. It was trust. When does trust become a critical factor within level three? Because we are handing a lot of responsibility over to the systems that once were handled by humans on a regular basis, and there needs to be a level of trust both on a candidate and a team side. Where does that truly come into play at level three?
Well, you said it yourself, and I kind of find it funny, right? We put a lot of trust in systems every day, right? From ATMs to credit card companies. We even sit in cars that drive us without us doing a single thing, right? So yes, trust is a big thing, and it's because for the first time decisions are made without humans in the room, but that may not, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? So if we go back to levels 0, 1, and 2, humans can override, ignore, or second guess AI recommendations in real time. At level 3, the system has already acted before a human sees it. And for some reason, we're really not comfortable with that, right? But we, again, it's everywhere around us, right? And we'll live that reality. It's just different context. So from the hiring perspective, a candidate has already been screened, scored, advanced. Those statuses have been changed, and some of them were deprioritized autonomously, right? And that's okay, right? Because the system looks at what you need, the skills, all that criteria, different guardrails, and then surfaces the best talent. If recruiters don't trust the system's judgment, they'll route around it. That's our flaw, right? At least when we first start with this. But that's where it can get messy. Okay. So rescreening candidates, the system already qualified, or overriding fit scores manually, creating shadow processes, that destroys the efficiency. And it actually creates data pollution, right? That degrades future AI quality. And we also see a lot of that, right? As our customers start adopting AI functionalities and features within our own product, we see a lot of that. But then those who kind of embrace it and just test it and then review the results, they actually see great success with it. So we're hoping to get everyone there in 2026. It'll come, and it'll come fast. From the technology perspective, and that's something here at Phenom we think about and talk about a lot, right? Is what trust requires, and for AI, right, applied AI, it's explainability, right? So can the system tell me why it made that decision? Auditability. Can I actually, is there a log for me to kind of, go and see what's going on, what happened? And consistency, really. So does it behave the same way across similar cases? And once we see that, and we see, we understand what's going on, then it'll be easier for us to kind of accept it and adopt it and use it for our own benefit and advantage. So we mentioned governance, right, so far, but also explainability. Those two elements are critical infrastructure for level 3.
Yeah, what I mean, you did mention both governance and explainability there. What happens when they're not strong? I guess better way to phrase this question was, you mentioned recruiters or team members kind of circumventing the system, right? Rescreening candidates. Are those examples of governance issues that you need to iron out beforehand? And then when that happens, it sounded like a cause and effect of that was you end up with poor data, right? You end up with undermining your system as a whole. What risks do both of these combined, and how detrimental is it to your process? Because we're going to get into what you have to have ironed out in order to get to level 4. But when you have folks almost detracting. And I think this is human nature. Whenever change
It
happens,
is. It is.
people are always going to be resistant. And if someone says they love change, they just haven't moved their house recently enough, because no one likes moving. And that's the perfect example of change. So tell me what kind of risks these bring up and how they can truly be detrimental to the business as a whole.
Yeah, so the first thing comes to mind, as you mentioned, it's data, right? And it could be the wrong hiring data. So if let's talk about bias for a second. If the AI has been trained on historically skewed hiring data, right, it will automate discrimination at scale, right? And we don't want that. So without explainability, you can catch it. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Compliance exposure, I guess, in regulated industries like healthcare, financial services, transportation, automated decisions that can be explained create legal liability, right? We, I mean, we always think about that. Um, and that's where, all these emerging AI regulations globally are focused. Also, phantom efficiency. We've seen that before. Let's say you start adopting this, right? The system is working because your, volume moves faster, but nobody's auditing quality of hire, right? Diversity outcomes or even candidate experience, and then speed without governance is just fast mistakes, right? So that's one more thing we need to think about. Um, and finally, I guess because I own candidate experience, it's candidate trust, right? Or lack of it, or erosion of it. So candidates increasingly know they're in an automated funnel. If it's not personalized enough, right, they lose trust, and that's a big brand killer, right? So that's one more thing we need to think about. We do have a healthcare organization that improved their NPS score from 64 to I think 77. And they did so just by pairing automation with personalization. They added a couple of placeholders in their email templates, right? That would
Mhm.
personalize the message more than just a regular template, and it worked, right? And it's all automated. It's like set it and forget it, but that's all it takes.
Yeah.
So
Just the little steps, right? I think of calling into the old phone trees, right? And it's like, please enter, your birth date. Please enter your name. You say it to the automated system, and then as soon as you get to talk to a human, they're like, "Can I please confirm your birth date, your name?" I'm like, "I know this call's recorded. You
yeah.
guys have it, probably for security purposes, but it gives you that kind of feeling of, I already did this before, why am I doing it again, which breaks the trust. But that little level of personalization where it's, hey, just want to confirm your birthday, is it blah 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 blah, goes a long way. And it sounds like it just, mentioning somebody by their name or the city that they're from within an email can bump up NPS scores as well. Bronca, I want to specifically talk about what's next, right? Level 3, I think, is where a lot of organizations who are really paving the way for AI and intelligence, and automation are at, right? Like if you are a front runner or really an ambassador for this sort of technology, this is where you're at right now. What do those organizations need to stabilize, need to make sure is in check before they can move on to level 4? Because we covered a lot. We covered the guardrails, we covered a lot of the pitfalls, and they're far more serious than they were at level 0, 1, or 2. Right? This is things that could potentially harm the business as a whole. What do you need to have ironed out before you can get to level 4?
So if we think about between the automation and intelligence, right, like those two sides, what you need to have in place and working fine is this exception handling, right? So let's say there's an exception handling agent that detects anomalies, okay? Meaning the system can self monitor, right? Not just self execute, right? That's when you know you're ready. That's the first thing, right? Also, if there's seasonal hiring automation, for example, and it runs predictable patterns without manual step, that's another example. Um, if compliance reporting is automated, validated, and submitted automatically, for example. Now, on the intelligence side, um, you know, and this is a big piece of it, and the data and just tracking everything that happens in the hiring journey. Workforce intelligence, for example, right? Workforce intelligence agents that monitor trends, right, and identify gaps proactively, right? You're not using data to report on, you're using data to inform future decisions. That's a big part of even what not even what Phenom does, right? It's just connecting all those steps, everything that happens from the moment a candidate lands on a career site, finds a job, applies, goes through screening, scheduling, what happens during the interview, all those different signals, who gets hired, who doesn't get hired, right? If they complete an assessment, now our assessments with the applied acquisition can predict if this employee will stay in this role for, let's say, 3 years, right? So that's very important. And like I said, workforce intelligence that monitor trends, that's proactively, that's a big one. um, Role specific test scenarios built by agents, not humans. So that type of stuff, really, if that is working well, if that's well defined and we've seen success with it, then we can kind of move to level 4.
Yeah.
But you know what,
Awesome.
level 3 sounds good to me. It's pretty good. Like, we
I
want
think
everyone there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you certainly want to make sure that you are walking before you start running, right? Level
Absolutely.
4 is a full out sprint. You're Usain Bolt levels. I'm okay with just a nice light jog outside right now. Level 3 is a good place to be until until you're ready for level 4. Branka, I want to thank you for joining. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention? Any question that I didn't ask you before we hop off and tell everyone to have a fantastic weekend?
I will say one thing. Like I said, this level 3 is an exciting one, right? But wherever organizations are, okay, I want to say this, um, where every level, okay, on this maturity scale represents a decision someone made to stop accepting the status quo, right? That's important. That's where we are right now. And level 3 doesn't happen by accident. It happens because someone on the team said, you know what, we can do this better, right? Our recruiters don't have to do all these different, tasks. We can automate that. Our people deserve better than this process, right? So, and one more thing, that's the spirit behind I Am Phenom in March, right? So, a community of HR practitioners who believe technology should serve people, right? They can come together and then see all the amazing stuff that we have prepared for them. It's going to be mind blowing. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait. I know Maddie last year or last week said it is the highlight of her year, and I think that goes for a lot of folks. So I'm excited. Excited to see you there as well. We can learn more about level 3, level 4, level 5, and beyond. I really appreciate you taking the time. Can't wait to have you on again. How was the first episode? Wasn't too bad, right?
It was great. It was great. I was nervous, but I can't wait to come back and talk about candidate experience if you'll have
We're
me.
gonna I will. We're gonna record something at I Am Phenom, whether you like it or not. We we will get it done in person.
Look forward.
Um, but thank you so much again. We can't wait to have you on. And for the audience at home, thank you again for tuning in. We'll be here next Thursday, as always, because we do this every damn Thursday. Everyone have a safe, happy, and healthy weekend. And hopefully we will see you in March at I Am Phenom, the 10th through the 12th. You can use promo code TRAIN, SHRM credits, HRCI credits. Everything will be there. Keynote speakers, AI, intelligence, automation, the kit and caboodle, if you will. Have a safe, happy, and healthy weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.